Hey, good morning to you ladies and gents. This is Back Brace channel. My name is Amir with a beautiful sunny Sunday morning here in Łódź, Poland. And in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a Python model to calculate and showcase different financial metrics, such as NPV, IRR, Payback Period, and PI. We're going to do that, of course, using machine learning in Python. So for that, I'm going to use my Visual Studio Code Jupyter notebook, but you're free to use Google Colab. For example, you can open your Google account, you just type Google Colab, and you will be directed to an empty page where you can type your code. No problem there. And before we get started, I would like to say here that I have a degree in finance and financial accounting from the Alexandria State University in Egypt. And I thought to myself, why not mixing finance and programming, creating interesting tutorials for those who are interested in, finance, investment, banking, stock markets, and so on. And one more thing before we get started, I would like to thank here all the new members of the channel. Thank you so much for your support. Also, I would like to thank all of the new subscribers to the channel. The newcomers, I would like to welcome you. And again, thank you so much. I wouldn't do it without you. Soon I'm going to hit 15,000 subscribers. That would never be achieved without your help, your interaction, commenting, and everything. So thank you so much. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get to the heart of that tutorial. And let me tell you a small story here. Any company in one point has to make investment decisions in its life. And the firms do so because it expects the investment to provide them with some benefits over a single or a series of years. So decisions like launching an advertisement campaign or R&D or research and development program have serious implications on the firm because they involve huge money simply. Therefore, a firm must decide on its investment only after properly evaluating it. And that's why we are going to discuss 4 of the financial terms used for evaluation and investment or project that the company is considering. The first financial term we have here is NPV, or net present value. NPV is a financial metric that calculates the present value of future cash flows generated by an investment or a project. Number 2, IRR, or internal rate of return. The IRR is a financial metric used to evaluate the profitability of an investment or project. Number 3, payback period. And the payback period is a simple financial metric that measures the time required for an investment to generate cash flows sufficient to recover the initial investment cost. And finally, we have PI, or Profitability Index. It's also known as the Profit Investment Ratio, PIR. That's a financial metric that is used to assess the profitability of an investment. And the calculation here is pretty simple. You divide the present value of cash inflows by the present value of cash outflows. Alright, so those were the 4 financial metrics that we are going to simply calculate them here in our machine learning tutorial. So go ahead, open your terminal here. I'm using Microsoft Windows 11 PowerShell terminal. So I'm going to create a new directory, or MKDIR stands for make directory, and I'm going to call it simply finance. You can choose any other name. I'm going to change directory to that, or CD finance. And tell you what, let's go ahead and open this immediately with Visual Studio Code by typing code space dot, hit enter. And by the way, I got a few questions asking about that see-through effect in Visual Studio Code. That's basically an extension called Glasset. Alright, so you can open here in the extensions bar and you will type Glasset. Alright, so let's get back to our folder. And let me go ahead and create a file here. I'm going to call it, let's say, cash. That's not the most creative name of all, but you can choose whatever name you want for your file. And be careful, I'm not going to do .py here. I'm going to do .i P, Y, and B. All right, that's Jupyter Notebook. To have that, by the way, if you will hit enter, let me just zoom out. That looks exactly like what you would do in Google Colab, let's say, right? Where you can type your code, you can run the code, you can add code cells, and so on. You can add markdown as well. So it's basically fully functional and it's fantastic. I like it. Let's say, for instance, that you want to import something like pandas as PD, and to run that code line, you hit Control Alt and Enter. Now you will be asked to choose your Python environments. That's why I told you in the beginning of the tutorial, you need to install Anaconda on your machine for that to work. So if you will choose Python environment here, you will need to choose the base, right? So you can see Anaconda 3, and inside Anaconda 3's folder, there is python.exe file, right? Choose that. And immediately the colors turn to, the appropriate colors. So let's run that again, Control Alt Enter, and boom. This green right mark means success. And you can hit Control Alt Enter or just simply click that execute cell. So once again, the main objective of this tutorial is to create a Python model to calculate and showcase the financial metrics that we have discussed earlier. So we're going to achieve this by leveraging various Python libraries and tools such as pandas, for instance. We're going to use NumPy as well. So let's go ahead and import NumPy. Going to give it an alias as np. The last package that we are going to use, and that might be new to you, it's called numpy_financial. And we want to import two classes, MPV and IRR. Believe it or not, it's called like that. MPV, net present value, and IRR, right? Save that, Control Alt Enter, evaluating, perfect. So what we need to do here is to import data from an Excel file. So basically your financial data should be inside an Excel file, and that's where we want to bring or import all the data to our financial model here. So to do that, I'm going to create a very simple 5 years period investment plan. And that's going to consist of 2 columns only. New Excel file. Let's call it again, financial_data. All right, perfect. Let's open that now. All right, great. So as I told you, I'm not going to create the most sophisticated financial plan. It's going to be only a 5 years plan. So in the first column in cell A1 is going to be period. In B1 here is going to be the cash flow. So we have the initial investment time. That's the year where we pay for the investment. So we are going to spend $100,000. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So let's say the first year we will have $25,000 of profits, 30,000. Let's say 35,000 and 40. That's incremented by 5 basically, and that's it. Let's just format that a little bit. Alt H. So let's do here like that. Let's also choose that. Let's do Control Shift $sign. And just to choose the currency, let's choose US dollar. Let's do Alt H9, and that's it. We are good to go. Let's do in general and in number. Let's do it like that, right? So the first year, year 0, we have paid $100,000. Then starting from year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, we started to make profits. Right? That's a very basic example. Let's close that for now. Let's close this now. And let me click here and we can see that our data is visible in our VS Code. All right, so let's go ahead now and read our, let me add actually a markdown. So what we want to do is to read financial data from Excel into a pandas data frame. Right, to do that, I'm going to declare a variable called df, which stands for data frame, of course, equal to pandas dot method called read Excel. You can find here that you have access to different reading methods to read from a CSV file, from an HTML file, a JSON file, an Excel file, even from a clipboard. All right, so we need to read from Excel and we want to read. So you will enter the name of your file, financial data dot xlsx, and we are good to go. Control Alt Enter to run that code line. So now we want to calculate the first metric, which is the net present value, or the NPV. So right here, calculate the NPV. And let's add a code cell. So what I want to do here is I'm just going to assume that the discount rate, so I'm going to declare a variable called rate. I'm going to give it 0.1. So 0.1, apologies. So that's the discount rate basically. Okay. Next, I want to get the cash flows. So the cash flows basically is the column here, the column B here with the cash flows, which starts with the investment of 100,000, then starts to, so that's cash inflows, and that starts to generate cash inflows. So let's actually create or declare that variable cash flows, which is equal to the data frame sub. So you'll open brackets like that, and you will enter the name of that column. So it's called cash flow, right? If you go here, find that's cash flow. We need that basically. All right. And we will change that, or we will convert that to list. So to list method. Control S to save here. Then I want the NPV result, or the result of the net present value, based on the calculation that our library is going to calculate. We're not going to do anything manual. And that's the beauty of machine learning dependencies and Python in general, because the number of dependencies and the support from the community is amazing, simply. So NPV underscore result, that's going to be the name of my variable, is equal to the NPV class here. So you can read that returns the net present value of cash flow series. All right, so we will need first the discount rate, and that's the first parameter we have got, which is on line 1, that's 10% or 0.1. So we will pass rate first, then separated by a comma, and then the next parameter is the cash underscore flows, which is essentially the cash flow. So cash underscore flows here, right? Control Alt Enter. Perfect. Next, we want to calculate the internal rate of return, or IRR. And I'm going to use, basically I use the markdown to write comments, but you're not obliged to do that. You can write the comment inside your code cell. That's okay. So I'm going to type here, calculate the IRR. I will add code cell. So again, I'm going to declare a variable. I'm going to call it IRR result, as we did here for NPV result, which is going to be equal to the IRR class. If you will open, you can read here, it says return the internal rate of return. This is the average periodically compound rate of return that gives a net present value of 0.0. So basically the values that we must enter here is the cash flows that we have. So the cash flows. That's the first one. And you can read here that it says that input cash flows per time period. That's it. By convention, net deposits. Well, that's fine. We have called it cash underscore flows. All right, so let's hit Control S, Control Alt Enter. Perfect. Let's add another markdown or comment, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to say calculate the payback period. So first of all here, let's go ahead and get the initial investment, which is the $100,000 that we have incurred the first, or the year zero, if you will. So initial investment, going to call my variable like that, is going to be equal to the cash flows variable sub zero, which is the year zero. Next, I want to assume that the payback period is equal to 0. So initially, the payback period is equal to 0, as well as the cumulative cash flow. Cumulative underscore cash flow is also equal to 0. So I'm going to loop over the period, so that's the number of years, and the cash or the corresponding cash flows to that. And for that, I'm going to use the enumerate method. So let's say for period and cash underscore flow in, I can't simply say cash flows because I want to iterate over 2 columns, right? So that's where the enumerate method comes to play. So I'm going to open a parenthesis here and I will enter the cash flows. So we are going to increment the cumulative cash flows by whatever cash flow is being added over the year. So cumulative cash flow plus equals to cash underscore flow. And I want to write a condition in order to check if the cumulative cash flows is more than or equal the initial investment, which was essentially $100,000. In that case, the payback period is going to be incremented by that period, by whatever period is in the table, in that case, 1 year. So I will say if cumulative cash flows is more than or equal to the initial investment, in that case, the payback period, I'm going also to increment it by the period plus 1, right? So we're going to move over from one period to another if the cumulative cash flow is equal to or more than the initial investment. That's the main condition. And if that's the case, we are going to break out of the loop. All right, Control S, Control Alt Enter. We don't get any errors, so perfect. Okay, we are almost done with our tutorial. Let's go ahead and add the last markdown to calculate the PI. All right, let's add the code and let's declare a variable called PI. And to calculate that, if you remember in the beginning of the tutorial, we said that we're going to divide the net present value of the cash inflows over the net present value of the cash outflows. So we want to take the net present value result basically, and we're going to divide it over the initial investment. But let me just use the absolute method to convert from a negative to positive value, just disregarding the negative sign. So that's the initial investment, which is the $100,000. So Control Alt Enter, and we are good to go now to print all of our results. So I'm going to add the final markdown here, and I'm going to say printing results. All right, let's add the code and let's go ahead and print. The first thing that I want to print here is the net present value. So I'm going to use the F string for formatting and open double quotes, and I will say net present value is equal to whatever it is in dollars. and I'm going to open curly braces. Inside here, I'm going to plug in the net present value result variable, and that's going to be just with two decimal points, two floating decimal points, basically, right? So single quotes or double quotes, you can do either way. So to be consistent, I'm going to do the same thing over the other metrics. So the next one that I want here is the IRR. So IRR, internal rate of return. And instead of the NPV result, I want the IRR result. That's it. And that's going to be basically a percentage and not a number. Third, we want the payback period. That's going to be, just I forgot to delete the dollar sign here. And that's going to be a number, just number of years. And we said that the less the number of years, the better for the company, as the quicker the profit is going to be generated and the quicker the initial cost will be covered. So let's just delete the MPVR. Let's delete all of that actually. And let's plug in the payback period, and I'm going to add here also in years. And finally, I want the PI. So again, we'll delete the dollar sign, and I'm going to say PI. And I want the PI as well. That's going to be also in dollars, because we're going to calculate this amount of money, which is basically the division of the net present value of cash inflows over the net present value of cash outflows. All right, so Control S and final results. Let's go ahead and do Control Alt Enter, and there we go. So first of all, we have the net present value, which is 29,000 here. So 29,078.68 to be exact. That's the net present value that we get from our initial investments for $100,000. 19% is the internal rate of return, and the payback period is 1 year only, which is fantastic. That means that after 1 year, the cost or the initial cost of investment is covered and we started to make profits. And that's exactly true, because after year 1, we have started to create 25,000, 30,000, and so on. All right. And finally, we have the profit index, which is 29%. By the way, if you'd like to visualize that, we can use something like Plotly, for example. Let's import plotly.graph objects, and I'm going to give it an alias of Go, for instance. So let's run that. All right. And let me come here below and let's add a code. And let's do that using a line chart, for example. So create a line chart using Plotly. All right, so let's do fig is equal to go.figure here. And let's use that fig.add_trace. I don't see it here in the choices. Trace, yeah. So I'm going to, inside my parentheses, using again the figure objects, and I'm going to use a method called scatter. So scatter here, basically that's an instance of a trace class from the Plotly graph objects package. All right, that's going to trace the movement of whatever we want to plot. So we want on both the x-axis and the y-axis, both the horizontal and the vertical. So I'm going to open parentheses, x equals to df or data frame, and for that I'm going to use the period label here, and the y is going to be equal to cash flows, and the mode, I can do it bar, I can do it whatever. So the mode is equal to, let's do lines. And also we're going to give it the name of, so let's give it the name of line, or let's do cash flow. Control Alt Enter, and there we go. Alright, so let's customize this a little bit, nothing fancy really, let's do that real quick. First of all, let me just grab that code because I'm going to plot again the chart, and I'm going also to just to make like that, and the results is going to be underneath the chart. So I'm going simply to customize the chart. Alright. So I'm going to use the figure, and I'm going to access a method called update layout. So update layout, this one is going to allow us to modify the parameters that we want. So the first parameter that I want to modify or create basically is going to be, let's say something like cash flow over time. What do you think about that one? Cash flow over time. And let's do comma because all of the parameters should be separated by commas. And then the x-axis underscore title, I'm going to do, that's going to be basically the period, because that's going to be on the horizontal axis, that's the x-axis. So this represents the number of years. So let's do period or years, for example. That's fine, it's up to you. And for the y-axis, I'm going to say something like cash flow. Save that, and don't forget to show the figure. So fig.show, and let's just decrease the distance. So let me add here plotting the chart, Control S, Control Alt Enter, and there we go. That looks much better. So let me just do like that. All right, hopefully this is clear for you guys. All right, so we have got here the cash flow over time. We have got the initial investment, which started from $100,000, and it started to, recover, and it was fully recovered by the end of the first year. And from that onwards, it started to generate cash flow, which is a great project to take. So say for instance that Netflix or Apple or whatever, let's say that Apple, for example, is going to do an advertisement campaign, and that's the project that it's going to take. Again, we have said that this is a very simplified set of data. That's it basically, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, don't forget to give me a thumb up. Don't forget to give me your feedback in the comments, and tell me if you would like to see more financial tutorials like that using machine learning. That's something that I would be very much interested in doing for you guys. All right, so thank you so much once again. Till next time, stay safe and be well. Cheers for now.